What does the music director do at SNL?
I'm basically like the musical bit for the writers.
The thing about music is,
It's inherently meaningless.
how did you go from where you were at Berkeley, volleyball/music teacher, to get what seems like a dream gig?
I mean, just saying yes to everything.
Like what?
Kids' birthday parties.
Literally everything.
You're never going to be perfectly happy all the time. The best you can hope for is to be reasonably happy. Most of the time.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Reasonably Happy. My guest this week is Eli Brueggemann. He is a multi-Emmy nominee, one-time winner. Did you win an Emmy?
One-time winner,
One-time
yeah,
winner.
yeah.
And the music director of Saturday Night Live, a little show they've been making here in Midtown Manhattan for about 5 decades. Not a bad run. He's also a graduate of UCLA.
Cal Berkeley.
Oh, I got that wrong. Dang it. So much for my research. Cal Berkeley, and he has a Master's of Jazz Studies from University of Southern California. Did I get that
That's
right?
right, yeah.
So you got a Master's in Jazz for the money.
Masters in jazz. Yeah, I was like, I want to be a rich guy.
Yeah.
I'm going to study jazz.
You missed the best credit.
What was that?
Snazzy dresser.
Snazzy
Oh,
dresser.
yeah,
I
look at
forgot.
that.
Yeah.
Hey.
So I literally put this on. I was like, okay, my denim's not matching. I look pretty good for a middle-aged white guy, bald middle-aged white guy, and
The shoes, too.
I think we were
the
parallel
pants and
thinking
everything.
today.
Yeah.
What brand of jeans are those? Are they Seven for All Mankind?
These are banana.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sale rack.
I think you look great.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Likewise.
I
Likewise,
appreciate
Paul.
it.
Yeah, excellent.
When did you fall in love with music?
Watching Tom and Jerry cartoons when I was a toddler, and then
Seriously?
just sitting down at my grandma's piano and just going like this all over the place.
Is that right?
Connecting the images that that you in your imagination with the sound, and that's kind of what started it.
Sometimes in those cartoons, they'd have like the 1812 Overture or something like that, some classical music pieces.
Carl Stalling is the composer. He's just one of the most virtuosic composers ever. I found out later that they would actually animate. They'd record the music first, and then they would animate to the music.
Really?
Because it's hard. Because when you have 60 people in an orchestra, it's harder to get that timing out to animation than the other way around.
So this would have been the 60s. They're drawing everything. 50s.
Yeah, or even before
they're
that,
painting
yeah.
each frame by hand.
Yeah.
And then playing the music with a live orchestra.
Yeah.
Crazy.
But animating after the music, animating to the music, because they can get precise with the animation how many frames it takes to get to a certain, a bell ring or like a Wile E. Coyote falling off the mountain, the anvil sound or whatever.
And that clicked with you.
That clicked with me, and then so it was always, it started from a place of improvisation and freedom for many years. I just goofed around on the little Casio synthesizer my parents got, and then they were like, when I was about 7, after goofing around for like 3 or 4 years, they were like, let's get this kid some lessons. And
Were your parents musicians?
no. My great-grandfather was a vaudeville singer, and his son, my great-uncle, was a really, really gifted whistler. It's really random. He's kind of a legendary speech pathologist who wrote the textbook on ear, nose, and throat stuff. So if I ever drop his name to an ear, nose, and throat, they're like, "Oh my God,
He's the man.
He's the guy." But he was an incredibly musical guy as well, and a very gifted whistler. And then there's a couple of his kids were professional musicians, so it lingers. My great grandma was a professional violinist back in early 1900s. No more music in my family than probably most people. Pretty
Do you
average.
think? I mean, I wish I were a musician. Like, I love music. I love rock bands and rap and all that stuff. But like, I have no musical talent, and I'm tone deaf. Is it a genetic thing?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's kind of a desire and a community thing. Like if your community, the people around you are musical, if you happen to go to a junior high school that has a great music department and the chicks think that it's cool, you can be a musician. It's like for me, it's just, I got bounced around in ways that led me towards music. You got bounced around in ways that led you towards comedy, and that there's sometimes no rhyme or reason to it, and the analysis of it is more personal than anything. And
When did you figure out that it was your thing? Like, you were pretty good at this, more so than at other things?
Kind of late. Sports were really important to me as a kid.
What'd you play?
I played baseball and basketball, and then late in high school grew a love for volleyball, and I ended up playing competitive men's volleyball through college at Cal, and it was kind of like between. I wanted to be a volleyball coach and maybe a music teacher in a high school. That thought kind of crossed my mind when I was like 21, 22. And then there was an incubation period of about 6 months in my last semester at Cal Berkeley, in which I'd completed most of my course load, and I had just like hours in the day to just go in the practice room. And so I spent about 9 hours a day practicing.
Practicing keyboards?
Practicing piano, yeah.
Yeah.
Like getting everything that I already knew at that point in my life in all 12 keys. And that's the big crutch for piano players. Like, C feels different from E flat, which feels different from F sharp. And so I spent all that time teaching myself how to do all the things that I knew in all 12 keys. And that was like a big hinge for me, because it allowed me to develop my ear and really become a professional musician.
Does that help with composition as well?
Yeah, ear training is. I think it comes from all. It's like when you're gonna say something in a group conversation, you can hear what you're going to say kind of in your head beforehand. It helps to connect the idea to physicality. It happens first from sight singing and singing what you're playing, and then that opens up a lot of doors for a lot of musicians.
What kind of music were you listening to in high school?
I was listening to when I first came to musical consciousness, I was listening to a lot of pop music, listening to a lot of Janet Jackson, U2, Sting, The Police. And then I went through like a metal period in middle school, because as one does, it's like Danzig. I loved Guns N' Roses for a minute. And, Hairband was real big in LA. And then I got deeply, through that I got into sort of the Chili Peppers. And then at that moment I sort of started discovering a lot of funk and soul sort of through the Chili Peppers, and like the more, like I started kind of in the white suburban territory, and then I worked my way into hip hop, funk, soul, ska. I played in a ska band in high school. That was my first band. And the whole time studying classical piano and learning my Bach, Beethoven, Mozart. All that stuff was kind of in the mix too, and I went to jazz camp or whatever, I was raised in an area that was like really musically vibrant in Silver Lake, yeah. So, we had an opportunity to go see Fishbone play. The Chili Peppers were still kind of like up and coming in the late '80s. At least it felt like that. Like you could see them at like venues smaller than stadiums or whatever. And it was just a vibrant place to be a kid at Marshall High School in Silver Lake, and there were a lot of bands, a lot of things going on. So,
were you in a band?
Yeah, I was in a band called Ocean 11, which was one of the known bands in the ska scene. A lot
with 311 and
more traditional, actually, more kind of on the Scotalites tip.
Right, yeah.
More on there was a band called Hepcat that we all idolized back in the day. They were big, and of course Fishbone were our heroes growing up.
How many guys were in the band, or how many members were in the band?
There were about like 6, 7. There were like 3 singers and a rhythm section with horns and everything. So it was hard, because I was like, Mr. Oscar Peterson jazz, hey, look at me, and I got put as the piano player in this band, and in a ska band,
It's more like bouncy.
it's more, yeah, you're basically like another drum.
Yeah.
And so you have to lock into these offbeats, and I remember like frequently getting like lost, like, okay, am I on the upbeat or am I on the downbeat, and like all this stuff is going on, and so it was a great experience for me to lock into a groove.
Are you a performer by nature?
Yeah, that's a good question. Sometimes.
There's more to come.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, I'm 48 years old. Like the last 15 years or so, I've made my living more behind the scenes, but I also do gigs, and I also music direct, which is kind of a performance.
You get the endorphin high from performing.
Yeah, I do recording sessions all the time.
Yeah.
But it's I don't really have the endurance that I do. Like I used to play 3-hour gigs, and now I play for 30 minutes straight.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's enough.
What's funny is I've had the good fortune of talking to a lot of different musicians and stuff, and everybody comes back to that sort of like the Beatles Cavern Club process of playing these 4-set nights, 8 hours a night, 6 nights a week as the forging experience where they became great at their as a band.
Totally. It's being in a room with other people putting stuff together is probably like the most broad brush thing you could say about every musician has in common.
Right.
At least every Gen X musician has in common. I see a lot these days like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if the music department just got 30 computers and just taught people music production, and that I just get so depressed.
Well, there's a lot of artists recently that have they started in their bedrooms,
which is great.
Clairo, I happen to know her dad, and she started making just these little ditties in her room, and she's exploded through social media.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Billie Eilish is the perfect example of someone who found their sound in their bedroom. Nothing wrong with finding your sound in the bedroom, but the reason I became a musician was the hang.
Right.
It was to be connected to something that everybody thought was cool.
Yeah.
And sometimes I worry about losing a little bit of that with the digitization of music. Not to say anything about the diminishing of the value of music that does. But that's a whole other story. But just the experience of camaraderie, the experience of getting together in the garage and sucking, and playing for 3 hours on a groove that's you're just noodling for no reason.
Well, that's what Dave Grohl said, right? Just go into the garage and
go
suck.
to the garage, just suck for a few years.
Yeah,
I love that, but it's hard to convince kids who are used to kind of creating their own realities instantaneously, and you have access to loops and all these digital audio workstations, AI now, that makes producing music kind of even less interesting than it was. And I'm a music producer. That's what I do.
So who's doing it right, though? Because I have all, as middle-aged men who dress like this and thinking we're cool, right? I have all the same resentment of these new platforms for delivering content, right? And that's a block I've got to get over, right? Instagram, even though I was very fortunate to work at Facebook, as a creative platform, I think it sucks, But then I watched this video the other day of this kid who was interviewed all these top creators, and the stuff they're doing is mind-blowing.
Right?
And so you go, okay, this is a canvas that you have to learn how to paint on. And there are people that are doing great. They tend to be younger. So who are the people that you admire in creating music in this new way?
That's a really good question. There are people who use the digital environment as a tool to make something and perhaps improvise using the tool, and then there are artists that 100% depend on the computer to even make anything. I would never, I don't like calling people out, but I'll say that I'll mention a couple people who I feel do it really well, that integrate machines with their soul and the ability to go in different directions live. That'd be McGee, mk.gee, who was just on our show a couple weeks ago, who had all this analog, digital and analog gear up on stage, guitars running through all that gear, and kind of a live producer, a guy that's playing drum machines and like turning knobs in the moment. So it's gear in the service of making something happen in the moment.
Right.
And we've never been in a better position to do that. It's really amazing when that happens. I mean, other guys that use electronics, it's brilliant, LCD sound system.
Oh my God, those guys are phenomenal.
I mean, I could tell that you like them just by how you're dressed.
I tried to get one of those square, microphones that James used. It's James, right? The lead singer.
Yeah.
He's got that like metal thing, which
Oh,
always,
yeah,
when I'm watching it, it kind of throws me off. But man,
Yeah, he's an eccentric dude.
they're so
it's
good,
an incredible
though.
band live. And also the Strokes.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not an electronic band, but like, I love their tones, and I love the rawness that they bring.
All right, so I was going to take a linear progression from where you were and at Berkeley 21, but now that you mention this, like, it occurs to me that SNL plays this really important cultural role, right? We talked about some of the McGee that you were just talking about. Never heard of that guy. I'll go back and watch his thing. But I remember the first time I ever saw Kendrick Lamar was on SNL. Mind-blowing set.
Right.
The first time I ever saw Arcade Fire, going back a decade or more.
Yeah, like 2008.
Yeah, like it was like, oh my God, who are these guys?
Yeah.
Like part of their job is to surface who's next in culture.
Yeah, we get to do that. They get to do that once or twice a season. It's
To amplify what's already happening in culture.
Exactly. I think it's sort of changed, especially with internet culture. Like before the internet, the only place to look was like a magazine or SNL. Mm-hmm. Really, to find stuff that you didn't know about. It was like there were rivers and tributaries. Everything was just so more organized. How music was received by the masses. Now it's like you're just in an ocean and there's water everywhere. And so what do you do as the booker of a show like SNL? You have to sort of find what people are already kind of like or what there's buzz about and give them that. But you only have a couple shots to get a couple undiscovered people every year, because you're not going to put people that nobody knows about on a broadcast level show. It's just you're not going to get the kinds of attention that you do when you put some other great people, but people who might be more in the pop zeitgeist, like Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B, Miley Cyrus for a while, Justin Timberlake back in the day. So one thing that's cool about the music on SNL is that the bands that the boss likes, the bands that Lauren is really into, you get to see them a bunch of times. And it's interesting to witness the way that they handle their music over the years. Like Miley Cyrus has gone through a bunch of transformations using the same band. One album was kind of electronic, the other was a different, more of a down home rock band setting. So it's cool to see the progressions. Kendrick has gone through a bunch of different animations of his music. So it's cool to see how things change.
Yeah.
And how they say the same thing.
What does the music director do at SNL?
I'm basically like the musical bitch for the writers. So starting Monday, they start milling on ideas. They meet the host.
Okay, Saturday night. Okay, the show ends at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
There's a big after party. Everybody sleeps till noon, and or sleeps till 3 or 4 on Sunday, and then Monday they straggle into 30 Rock and start looking at pitch ideas for the coming Saturday.
Exactly, and then I come in like Tuesday afternoon and I start just laying tracks down for any kind of demos that they might need for a Wednesday table read.
Tuesday is the late night, or Wednesday?
Tuesday's the late night that the writers stay up. I used to stay up with them before I got wise, and now I go earlier on Tuesday, and I leave earlier on Tuesday, and I wake up early in the morning on Wednesday and start blasting away at tracks and scripts.
So they go, Eli, I've got this idea, and what happens?
We decide whether it's something that a track needs to be made for, or whether it's something that I can play live on a piano, because it's an more informal setting on Wednesday to table read. But we do produce it like a live radio show with sound effects and pre-recorded
And you're in
music.
the room at the table.
I'm in the room at the table
with your little portable Casio that your parents got you.
Yeah, more or less. It's like a keyboard, but it's actually more than that now. I have it hooked up into the computer, so I have a sampler, and I have all the tools of a digital audio workstation live. Then there's our music editor, our music supervisor is also running tracks as well for themes and underscores and things like that. So it's a fully produced show.
What's the difference between music supervisor and music director?
A music supervisor chooses music, usually from libraries, or a music supervisor will choose composers. But in our case, he only has me. His wonderful music supervisor named Marty Brumbach, who for many years was the music editor under Hal Wilner, the legendary Hal Wilner, who's passed during the pandemic, very unfortunately. But Hal left a legacy of really great taste and understanding of every genre of music, and he passed that down to Marty, and Marty's been doing it for the last 4 years.
All right, give me an example of a sketch that some of us might know where you played a part in kind of creating the vibe of the sketch.
Well, it happens in a couple of different ways. The monologues are always kind of a big organizational task for me, because I have to compose the song with the writer, and then I have to teach the song to cast for the Wednesday table read,
and the host,
yeah, who hosts aren't used to reading 40 scripts and then having to sit down and cold read them and learn music. Usually they tend to give the monologue songs to people who are gifted musicians, so like Justin Timberlake, Ariana Grande, Ariana DeBose. But it always gets my blood going when it's the monologue, because it feels like it's kind of an important send up for the show. Like it can't fail. It can't be. It's like this person is here and they need to be confident and in the moment together with the people. So the band just needs to lubricate that, not to be like, oh my God, wow, it's not about the music. It's about this very specific moment of the host landing on home base and connecting with an audience that they're hopefully going to make laugh for the next hour and a half. And so you got to finish on a high note. There's all these like very SNL-y kind of monologue tropes that I had to learn quickly and understand. And they're also the most satisfying, because there's human beings making sounds from the bandstand, and it feels very live when done well.
Give me an example of some of those tropes that we would probably all recognize but don't necessarily enumerate.
Like the host is on stage in the middle of a joke, and then a cast member comes on, like, "Oh, hey, Ariana, I didn't know you're going to do blah 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 blah," and they're like, and then you hear the little piano start to creep in, and it's like,
there's going to be a song.
Yeah, there's going to be a song. It's like it's comfort food to the audience, because there's a certain predictability of it.
Right.
You see Lenny Pickett over the host's left shoulder on your right side. You see James.
He's the
Genus.
sax player.
He's a sax player.
Yeah.
You see James Genus on the left, our bass player, Ron Blake, so like some
Whatever
of these
happened to G.E. Smith? Where's that dude now?
G. Smith retired in the early 2000s, and then he's still around. He came back for the 40th anniversary.
Oh, that's cool.
Hell of a guitar player. Oh my God.
I think I saw him play with Roger Waters in the Wall, like back in L.A.
He played bass with those guys.
He was playing Roger Waters' parts, and holy shit, man. But I digress. Okay, so there's been a lot of more straight stand-up monologues in the last couple of years that are generally kind of politically oriented. And there's a lot made of the band's reaction or lack thereof to a monologue. What do you make of that?
I
Like, should we be watching the band to find out?
I do.
Hey, do I think these guys? If dude's not laughing, is that an indication that the host isn't funny? I don't think that's fair.
No, it's definitely not, because this when you see it on air, it's the third time they've seen it.
Sure.
And for that reason, actually, sometimes like the more seasoned comics will hold jokes till air. Right. Chappelle does that every time, and Bill Burr did that once. Chris Rock knows the show really well, so he always withholds jokes before air. And then you can get the band a little bit more. But I mean, if they've heard it 3 times, they're also, they're all on in-ears, and there's communications going on
Producers
in their ears.
talking
Yeah,
in their
there's
ear.
like, I'm talking to them sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
There's countdowns, and so their job is just to kind of blend into the set.
Right.
And it should be a testament to how great something is when you can when you can break them. When they're not told to break or not break, but they're just kind of told to be natural and don't move around too much and distract from the host. And if you laugh, if you bust up laughing, then you bust up laughing.
So one of the things we generally cover on Reasonably Happy and its predecessor, Crazy Money, is sort of the journey. And I found your journey kind of interesting. Like, how did you go from where you were at Berkeley, volleyball/music teacher, to get what seems like a dream gig?
I mean, just saying yes to everything. It's like as a young musician, there's opportunities in big cities, and they come in every shape and size and form. And
what?
Kids' birthday parties.
Literally everything.
Teaching people, accompanying actors who want to be singers. I kind of fell into like the cabaret scene in LA for a while, and got connected with this really great human being named Clifford Bell, who introduced me to like dozens of singers, and I got good at accompanying people that way. And so just out of it, I mean, there's like dozens of stories like this of growing up in LA and just taking every gig out of necessity. And
did you worry about money when you were a young musician?
I think every young musician worries about money. I mean, I was always able to make ends meet. I got married relatively early. I was 25 when I got married. I had 2 kids by the time I was 32. I bought a house when I was like 27. So like I was working, but you're not really ever truly comfortable as a musician until you have basically musical real estate, which is like you have built something that somebody has licensed or that somebody uses. And when I was 30 years old, I was a pianist, working pianist and keyboardist, playing with a bunch of different bands, doing sessions, but I had yet to really build any of that musical real estate. No catalog yet. And so this is about 2004, 2005, I started like being like, okay, I'm going to get into this computer business. I'm going to start learning how to produce music in a computer, and started scoring History Channel documentaries with a friend and getting my feet wet in that world.
And that creates recurring income.
Yeah, exactly. So that when the gigs die down a little bit, you don't have to like hustle teaching so much, because teaching is great too. But
baseline mailbox money.
Yeah. Like I always tried to keep the teaching thing as in balance with my professional career, and very, very fortunately, I should mention, I was able to get a job at the inception of the Silver Lake Conservatory of Music in Los Angeles, which was opened by Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers around 2001, and the community that brought together in terms of teachers and giving each other's gigs and like having people come in wanting to learn piano. There were also musicians in the area. It was just this amazing cultural place to be in your 20s. a lot of gigs, a lot of sessions, a lot of meeting interesting and cool people, and a job that was like, oh, you need to go on the road for 2 weeks? Cool, just get a sub. And so like the flexibility and the understanding of young musicians is what that school brought to the table for me. That was totally an important foundation for me.
And how did you find your way to SNL?
I auditioned for the band in like 2010 on the recommendation of the current guitar, to be the keyboardist, and I was one of a small handful of people that kind of got called back.
Did you know the other people who were applying for that?
I knew a bunch of people that went and auditioned. I actually ended up meeting a bunch of people who I found out later auditioned. None of us got it except for Toughest Zimbabwe, our great keyboard player.
Great name.
Yeah, I know it's getting better. Toughest Zimbabwe.
Toughest Zimbabwe.
Yeah, I mean,
bro,
he's a badass motherfucker.
Yeah,
that just screams badass. So he got the gig. I did not get the gig, but
how did it feel when you didn't get the gig? Did you want it? Did you invest a lot of emotion into that? Potentially,
I mean, it was pie in the sky.
Gig?
It was, yeah. But I knew that I did well at the audition because I hung with Lenny Pickett for like 3 hours, and I was like, I walked out of that building being like, oh wow, this could happen. And then he called me like 6 months later to tell me I didn't get the gig. But again,
that's a lot of time to wait.
I know it was a lot of time to wait too, and we also had like an hour and 15-minute conversation. I remember. I was on vacation with my parents at the time, and we had two very small babies. And I went out on the deck and I talked to Laney for a long time, and I came back and they're like, so you got the gig, right? And I was like, no, I didn't. But it was so weird because I talked to him for like almost an hour and a half.
What did you talk about?
We just talked about just life and like what the show is like. And I was like, this is just really strange. Turns out they were milling about whether to hire me for the music director gig.
But you didn't know that.
But they didn't tell me that until like 3 or 4 months after that, when I got another weird nebulous phone call from one of the producers like, hey, we're thinking of, maybe having you come and shadow the music director that we have here because she's having some health problems, and like she might be having to step aside, so we want to have somebody around that knows how to do it. And that was weird. I was like, that's kind of a strange. Am I hired? What's going on here?
I've heard stories that like Lorne doesn't like make an offer.
No,
he sort of goes, oh, what would you think? Or
yeah. There's very and that trickles down to the other producers. So the producer that called me, Stacey Foster, was really nebulous about it. I was like, and then I had a series of conversations with him. Each one kind of not giving me any kind of confirmation or whatever. I'm on the road at the time with this amazing Broadway singer Matthew Morrison, who was on the show Glee. He was doing a big tour at the peak of Glee, and I got called in the middle of that tour. Hey, Lorne wants to meet you. I'm like, why? Like, am I hired or what's going on? So I flew to New York in the middle of the tour. Met.
How long did you have to wait for Lorne?
Oh, it was 5 minutes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it wasn't bad. Yeah,
I've heard he puts people on ice in the waiting room.
Yeah, when I met him, I was like, it made he reminds me of my dad so much that it really kind of dispelled any of the nervousness for him.
In what way does he remind you of your father?
There's like the exact same age. They come from the same cultural knowledge and sensibilities, that the Steve Martin era, the Smothers Brothers. It was just a feeling. I don't know. I felt comfortable talking to him. And
what'd you talk about?
Like the gigs that I was doing and like the people that I was trying to name drop as much as tried to name drop it. I'm not sure.
How do you impress Lorne Michaels with name dropping?
It's hard, man. You can't.
He pretty much knows everybody.
Yeah.
So I got to tell the story. This is like 24 years ago. I saw Lou Reed at the Beacon Theater, and I can't remember who I was with, but I was like 8th row center, and Lorne Michaels walks up and sits in the front row. And then Lou Reed comes out and goes, "Hometown show," and just kicked it off, and it was fantastic.
Wow. Oh, that's awesome.
It was so cool.
It's
Point being is Lorne,
he gets around.
He not only knows these people, they're like, fans of his.
I gave him, in retrospect, I gave him sort of Nile Rodgers was on our show performing Let's Dance with Jimmy Fallon for a monologue.
Shit.
It was one
He's
of
the guy, the
pinnacles.
funk guitarist.
Yeah, one of the pinnacles of my career.
Duran and all that.
I mean, he is Chic, the band Chic,
Right.
and then had a resurrection with Daft Punk.
Oh, holy shit!
Just a beast, and the coolest guy ever. And I went up to Lauren. I was like, Lauren, it's so amazing that Niall's here. He's like, I was in the studio when David Bowie, when David recorded Let's Dance.
Oh my God!
And I was like, what were you doing there? And I realized afterwards
Just hanging out.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, his friends, friends with the producer or whatever. He was just hanging out, checking it out. But I realized, okay, he might have taken offense to it. Be like, what are you doing there?
Right. Well,
you don't know anything about music.
It's so fascinating to read these, just the history of the stuff we grew up watching, and just.
Yeah.
So we might have Paul Schaefer in here in a few weeks.
Oh, cool.
And so I'm listening to his memoir right now, and it's talking about he connected by being the musical director on Godspell in Toronto in like 1972 or something, and on that cast is like Eugene Levy, Martin Short, Gilda Radner, and it's just finding yourself in these pockets of talent that then go on to explode.
Yeah, it's just the only advice for anyone coming up is just show up. Just show up somewhere. I mean, because even your failures can lead to things that open up success for you. Like at my audition with Lenny, the reason they even knew I could do the music director gig is that I played Lenny one of my goofy, silly songs that I wrote. That was a reaction to working for this jive-ass music director who fired me one time. And I was like, I wrote this song about how LA's full of all these faker dorks that don't know shit about anything. And I just wrote that for fun, but I recorded the song and and then I played it for Lenny at our audition. He's like, so it's like, oh, this guy writes songs. He has a sense of humor. Mm-hmm. He can read and write, and you just never know when somebody's going to be looking for somebody. And now that I'm on the other side of it, 15 years later or whatever, I'm looking for people. When you get to be 40, 50, 60 years old, you can't do it by yourself anymore. You need help. And so you're looking for those same talented people. Where do you look? You just look in your network. You're like, where are you?
I think it's amazing when you told me when we spoke on the phone that, the way you got the gig was by not getting another gig. And it's so easy to get, down on yourself when you miss out on an opportunity that looks like, this is it. This is what I finally got it, man.
Yeah.
And then, you take a branch over here and it turns out maybe even better than it would have been if you got what you thought you wanted.
And certain times of your life are better for certain things than others, there's jobs that are perfect for a 20-year-old that would not be perfect for a 40-year-old.
Correct.
It's funny, and the entertainment industry has changed so much around 2000. I graduated with a master's degree in jazz studies in 2002. It was a music degree for the 1900s. Like I didn't have to learn how to use Finale or Sibelius, like the notation software. I could write my charts out by hand, which is ludicrous to think of. But I wrote whole big band charts out by hand, including all the parts. It was a 1900s music education, and I had to sort of catch up with the computer stuff. I felt Now the conundrum, I think, is kind of the opposite. It's like there's so much information to learn, computer-wise and production-wise, for a musician to actually have a career. That some of the stuff that I learned how to master in, with my body and my my hands. I feel like that's kind of almost unique now.
Like you have to bring the humanity to the technology.
Yeah, and like I talk to kids, and kids are like, "Whoa, man! Like you put all the dots on the paper, man. like that's how you write music for an orchestra. You put the dots on the on the page. It's normal to me, but like kids are kind of fascinated by someone who does that
on the page. Where are we, Mike? Time wise.
Was getting up my phone to tell you we're at.
Tell me where we are. Okay. All right. Let's make sure we talked about all the things do you get to inject your humor through music into the bits that you produce? Sketches, not bits.
The way that I can inject my humor is not through the joke. I don't write the jokes, but I have control over timing and tempo.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, you'll put in a couple extra beats so that a joke lands on a different side of the beat. There's mixed things. I can be in I can be making a track and then pull stuff out at the right moment that helps to sort of punch the joke up. I can compress a vocal to make it punch through. So like there's things that we do to help the joke and to sell the joke, but I don't write the joke.
Right.
I laugh in the room when something's funny. There is a certain, I don't want to say power, but I'm part of the community that determines whether something is funny or not. So there's that, I guess.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And you work with everybody from, all the people you've mentioned before, Ariana Grande, Justin Timberlake, Mick Jagger. Do you get nervous around any of these folks?
Not anymore. I more feel sorry for them.
Really?
Because they have to learn so much shit, and they are. I mean, unless they're ex-cast members come back and it's amazing. Or also like when like genius musicians come through, like Ariana Grande, Miley Cyrus, Justin Timberlake, Bruno Mars. Like they drive the bus, and you're just like, yeah, no problem. It becomes a little bit more difficult with some of the actors who are used to like, the camera being in on them. They're down in here, and it's like this is not that. This is live. You have to be big, and you have to know what you're doing. Mm-hmm. You don't get extra takes, and so sometimes you have to like plod gently when you're teaching somebody something that might be a little bit out of their comfort zone. But honestly, like everybody that shows up at SNL, all these A-list celebrities, they're on their best behavior there because they're somewhat nervous. They're up for the challenge.
They've got something to prove.
They got
a whole other level of performance.
Yeah, and the best ones are the ones that just kind of let it go. Like the ones that just don't feel like they don't have to understand everything.
Who's an example of that?
Of someone that really tries to understand and dig in.
Well, you said the guy who lets it go.
People who just let it go. Oh, geez.
Those are the good ones. You say.
Yeah, most of them do. I mean, ex-cast members know how to do it, of course. Like Maya Rudolph is like the best. Justin gets it, Miley gets it, Ariana Bose gets it. The stage actors get it because they're used to being in that flow state in front of an audience. God, recently the stand-ups have been really good recently because
Nate Bargatze came back like
it's amazing,
a few months later.
I love his nonchalant, like I just love his brand, man. I'm there for it. And he's done really great on SNL. We even got him in a song, Lake Beach, one time, which is pretty cool. But I've been having a great time. It seems to be getting more fun as technology improves, as like my experience and my knowledge of pop culture has gotten a lot deeper over the years, and it's just a fun place to be. It's really lucky to still be there.
Incredible that you've done 15 years now.
15, yeah.
That's crazy. All right, let's do fill in the blank, and we'll get out of here. If I could play with any band in history, it would be
the Duke Ellington Orchestra.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
I mean, it's the greatest band in history, I think. All the individual personalities coming together as one, the greatest rhythm sections in the world. That's for jazz, but for like a more modern thing, what band would I love to play with? I would like to play with Brandi Carlile.
Yeah?
Yeah. Brandi Carlile is just the most authentic thing in the world, and her band is killer.
Yeah.
Top shelf LA and Nashville, I think mainly Nashville, session musicians. It's an incredible experience. Every time she's come on the show, I've really enjoyed talking to her, and that's one.
Her music feels super authentic.
It is, yeah, it's great. And that Joni tribute that she put together a few weeks ago in LA, I saw a bunch of the videos for that. That was amazing. Also, I mean, right up there on the top of, if you're talking New York, especially, is Michelle Ndegeocello. I've always been a huge fan of her music, and the improvisation that exists in it, and the trust that she puts in her musicians. I love the Stephen Colbert band right now.
Really?
Yeah, my friend Louis Cato over there is doing such a great job with that. The band sounds phenomenal in a very difficult room to sound great in. It's not the best acoustic
That's the Ed Sullivan
situation.
Theater.
Yeah, it's really cavernous, but the last few years they've really dialed in the sound, and the band sounds incredible.
That's cool.
Yeah, props to them.
The thing about music is
it's inherently meaningless. You have to convince people that it's worthy of their attention. And you can do that by figuring out what it is that they want to hear and giving that to them. Or you can be like, I feel it like this, and this shit is dope.
Yeah.
Check it out. So it's like, as a musician, you're always kind of you're having to balance those two things as a musician when you're trying to commodify music, because it's people are content to accept bad music that has low taste, or like bottom of the brainstem kind of lyrics, you know, that talk about just drugs and partying, and like not even a double entendre, just like, you know, fucking bitches. And I mean, I love some of that music too, because there's a lot of great stuff in the productions of some of that stuff. But like, you have to, as a musician, you have to convince people that what you're expressing is worthy of their attention, and that's the bar.
Yeah. Have you seen Bo Burnham's pandering thing about country music?
Yeah, but not specifically.
It's a satirical song he wrote a song called "Pandering" and he uses all the musical tricks, the tropes of country music, and he just eviscerates the modern corporate country music.
Yeah,
it's hilarious, and I highly recommend that our viewers watch it.
Yeah, I mean, it's in country deep, it's in rap really deep, and then on the other, in the pop side of things, it's in maximalist and triteness, like avoiding anything that has any personal meaning. And like that's cool too, because like I mean the legendary bands also did that too, but like it was mixed in with more, you know, like the Stones kind of got into some of that, but like it always felt like it had a personal, that it was meaningful to the people who were making the music. Sometimes in pop, like I feel like it's like there's a little bit of a disconnect between who the person is and what message they're selling. But I mean, that's for the consumer to determine. I'm just one person.
There you go. The person who makes me laugh the hardest is.
Oh man. Jeez. It's changed over the years too. Nate Bargatze.
That's good.
I mean,
My wife would
yeah.
say the same thing. She's consistently reminding me how funny Nate is.
I mean,
and I'm like,
you
I
don't
get
think-
it. I
yeah,
get it.
you- like
He's
you-
10 times more successful than I am.
Yeah.
100.
Jesus.
Let's 1,000.
This is kind of it's
Mike shaking his
It's
head
kind of random,
vigorously.
but that was Chappelle fucked me up for 15 years.
In a good way.
In a good, yeah, like just a brilliant storyteller. Jim Norton fucks me up. Oh, Dave Attell. I've never
Yeah.
laughed harder in my life than seeing Dave Attell.
His
20
recent
years ago.
special.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's what? A year old maybe at this point?
Yeah.
There's more punchlines in the first 5 minutes of his special than in the average half-hour Netflix special. He's
Jokes
so good.
per square inch.
I got to open for him a bunch of times, like 18 years ago, and he was the most generous, like unassuming person in the green room. He would let random LA comics come do like 4 guest spots in front of him,
Wow.
whereas other comics who were, bigger brands maybe would be like, no guest spots, no, because they weren't sure they could handle any deviation from the rhythm that they wanted to set up.
Yeah.
Attell can follow anybody under any
Yeah.
circumstances,
Yeah. Any
and
situation.
destroy. He doesn't
Yeah.
care.
That's what the versatile comedians are always really incredible. Like Colbert. I don't, and not to say it has to be political. Sarah Silverman can kind of get to those places, like where it's like any room following any act. Adam Sandler.
Sure.
Adam Sandler is a huge influence on me in terms of, I used to write goofy songs and stuff before showing up at SNL, and like that's like the template, like where you dangle a carrot and you get everybody thinking that you're going one way and then you pull it back. There's a predictability to his music and to his comedy that he plays with that I think is super cool, and it connects with all kinds of different people, more so than probably anybody I can think of. Like, is there any comedian who can play to a group of people from all walks of life, just standing there with a guitar? I don't think there's anybody better.
All right, last question. Now, I realize how limited this is, especially since you mentioned Oscar Peterson earlier, but I was going to say Professor Longhair, Dr. John, or Billy Preston, but maybe you should just give me your top 3 keyboardists ever.
Those are three pretty good ones. Billy Preston's pretty important to me too. I mean, geez, my favorite musicians are classical composers, because I don't think you just can't compare these guys to things that have stood the test of time. Bach, Scriabin, Chopin, Beethoven, Mozart, kind of. But if you're talking modern keyboardists in the popular zeitgeist,
I'm not talking about harpsichordists.
not harpsichord. I mean, my guys coming up were Herbie Hancock, Keith Jarrett, and Chick Corea, and the whole diaspora of post-bop jazz guys. But you got to throw in the organ players, like Jimmy Smith is a huge influence on me, and like honestly, like my teachers and just people who I grew up around, who I went to their shows and saw them play millions of times. People that aren't in the popular zeitgeist, but people like Shelley Berg, Alan Pasqua, Bill Cunliffe. These are guys I studied with at USC. Dick Whittington up in Berkeley I studied with. So like those are the guys that like were like, hey, you need to check this out. You need to check that out.
Right.
Brad Meldau, I went to see him a million times back at Largo, back in the early 2000s. Yeah, so those are kind of my guys, and then there's all these young guys that are doing amazing things. Gerald Clayton is probably my favorite jazz piano player in New York right now. All kinds of really interesting projects he's doing. But it's a crazy world right now because you're just in an ocean, and there's so much great stuff happening. It's just a matter of finding the right community of listeners that can hip you to certain cool things, and that's like kind of an active thing. Mm-hmm. Because if you're not activated that way, then you're just gonna listen to whatever's in the background of the reality TV show that you're watching.
All right, friends, make sure you keep an eye out for a handsome bald man on the side of the stage when you're watching SNL. Eli, where can our listeners find out more about you?
You can check me out on Instagram, at Elijah Jams, or I have a group in that's like an electronic Latin group called the Excavators.
Oh, cool.
We just released a record this year, and I'll be playing some gigs around Latin America and New York City.
Right on. Yeah. This is a lot of fun. Thanks for taking time to join us.
My pleasure.
All right,
Thanks
Eli
for having me.
Brueggemann. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.